Hello ma'am, good morning. I hope you are in a good health. My name is Delvina Rebecca, a student from grade 10 of social class. Well, on this video, the subject of my presentation is narrative text. The presentation will be in two parts. In the first part, I'm going to tell you about the general informations of narrative text, such as the definition, social functions, language features, and generic structures. Then followed by observing and analyzing a narrative text for the second part. Now, let's move to the first part of my presentation, which is about the general informations of narrative text. To begin with, I will talk about the definition of narrative text. Narrative is a type of text which chronologically tells about a story with complication or problematic events and resolutions to solve it. So, the next point is the social functions of narrative text, which are to entertain or amuse the readers or listeners, and to tell stories or past events. Now, I want to describe about the generic structures of narrative text, which consist of three main sections. They are orientation, complication, and resolution. Firstly, the orientation. It is the opening paragraph that introduces the characters, setting, and time of the story. Usually answers what, who, where, and when. Secondly, the complication that tells the beginning of the problems between two or more characters which develops to the crisis or climax. Thirdly, the resolution. It is the end of the story which occurs when the problems are solved and the story concludes, either in a happy or tragic way. So now, we come to the last point of the first part, which is the language features. The first one is past tenses. There are four tenses that is often used in narrative text, such as the past simple, the past continuous, the past perfect simple, and the past perfect continuous. But the most common of these is the past simple. For example, she followed him into the woods. The second one is adverbs of time that are used to tell us when an action happened, but also for how long and how often. For example, once upon a time, a long time ago, one day, and the list goes on. The third one is temporal conjunctions. They represent sequence relationships between clauses, including suddenly, after, before, and many more. The next one is action verbs. They explain what the subject of the sentence has done. For example, told, stood, saw, ate, drank, etc. Then, there are adjectives to describe or give more details about the characters, the setting, and any kind of things in the story. For example, the king was a humble and kind-hearted man. There are also direct and indirect speech. Direct speech repeats or quotes the exact words spoken. For example, Snow White said, "I'm upset." Meanwhile, reported or indirect speech is usually used to talk about the past, so the tense of the words spoken are changed. For example, Snow White said that she was upset. And the last one is specific character. The story focuses on specific characters, not general. For example, the main focus of The Legend of Malin Kundang is Malin Kundang. I would now like to change direction and analyze the structure and also the language features of a narrative text titled King Midas and His Golden Touch. In ancient Greek, there was a king named Midas. He had a lot of gold and everything he needed. He also had a beautiful daughter. Midas loved his gold very much, but he loved his daughter more than his riches. One day, a satyr named Silenus got drunk and passed out in Midas' garden. Believing that satyrs always brought good luck, Midas let Silenus rest in his palace until he was sober, against the wishes of his wife and daughter. Silenus was a friend of Dionysus, the god of wine. Upon learning Midas' kindness towards his friend, Dionysus decided to reward the king. When asked to wish for something, Midas said, "I wish everything I touch will turn into gold." Although Dionysus knew it was not a great idea, he granted the wish. Excitedly, Midas went around touching random things in the garden and his palace and turned them all into gold. He touched an apple and it turned into a shiny gold apple. His subjects were astonished but happy to see so much gold in the palace. Midas then went to hug his daughter, and before he realized, he turned her into a lifeless golden statue. Aghast, Midas ran back to the garden and called for Dionysus. He begged the god to take away his power and save his daughter. Dionysus gave Midas a solution to change everything back to how it was before the wish. Midas learned his lesson and lived the rest of his life contented with what he had. Okay, after reading the text, we could conclude that the first paragraph, which began with "in ancient Greek" and ended with "more than his riches," is the orientation. Why so? Let's find out the reason. As we already know, the orientation usually includes what, who, where, and when in its paragraph. On the first paragraph of this narrative text, we could find the answers to these questions. Where and when did the story take place? Who is the main character? And what did Midas love? Next, the complication starts from paragraph 2 until paragraph 4, because the problem started after Midas found Silenus passed out in his garden. He let Silenus rest in his palace since he believed that satyrs always brought good luck. Dionysus, who is a friend of Silenus and also the god of wine, rewarded Midas for his kindness by granting his wish to be able to turn everything he touched into gold. The story reached its climax when Midas accidentally turned his beloved daughter into a lifeless golden statue. And the last paragraph is the resolution. The problem has resolved because everything finally went back to normal and it made Midas contented with what he already had. Now, let's analyze the language features. For the past tense, the narrative text only used one past tense form, and that is past simple. For example, in ancient Greek, there was a king named Midas. On the text, I could only find one example of adverb of time, which is one day, a satyr named Silenus got drunk. For the temporal conjunctions, there are when, then, and before. For the action verbs, there are ask, said, and ran. For the adjectives, there are beautiful and sober. There is also a direct speech from the third paragraph. Midas said, "I wish everything I touch will turn into gold." Last but not least, the narrative text mainly focuses on King Midas, so he is the specific character. The story teaches us to not be greedy in life, to be happy and grateful of what we have, because people who want to get everything all at once usually end up getting nothing. And that concludes my presentation. I'd like to thank you for taking time out to listen to my presentation. May God bless you and see you next time.